Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. This is your Inept General bringing you another Total War Warhammer Legendary Lord lore video, and today we are going to be looking at Vilitch the Curseling, the Master of Misrule, the Twisted Twin. There was once a pair of twins born to one of the Norscan tribes of the north. Their birth had been difficult, as the greedy infants had sapped all their mother's strength, costing her her life. The twin boys named Tommen and Vilitch were very different. Where Tommen grew tall and strong, Vilitch was a weakling and a runt. Tommen was well-muscled and athletic, and showed a great aptitude for the hunt, and excelled in combat training. Vilitch, on the other hand, was despised in his village as a weakling, oft mocked for his ugliness and frailty, and was humiliated by being denied the use of a sword, a right afforded to almost all the young boys of the village. Instead, he was forced to carry out his mother's chores instead of going along with the activities of the other boys in the village. If you thought Tommen would pity and or protect his brother, you'd be mistaken. Tommen now saw his brother as little more than a shameful parasite, and would beat the diminutive Vilitch mercilessly at the slightest provocation. This abuse, often carried out in front of their father, who would listen to Vilitch's sobbing pleas for his brother to stop, or his father to intercede and help him, was met upon deaf ears as the beatings continued throughout most of Vilitch's life. As the years progressed, Tommen rose to lead the tribe's young warriors, and seemingly daily won new accolades. Vilitch, however, barely managed to scrape by as an apprentice to the tribe's shaman, where he learnt a few meager spells and gained some knowledge about the powers that lay beyond the veil. Cursing his life every night, Vilitch prayed fervently to Tzeentch to reverse their fates, to grant him his brother's strength and leave Tommen the weak and accursed one. Tzeentch, who delights in anarchy, was titillated by his worshippers' situation and the opportunities it presented. One Gehemenstadt night, when the chaos moon passed closest to the earth, Tzeentch took action. Vilitch awoke in horror to find his body fused to that of his brother. Upon his initial shock, he realized this horror came with its fair share of gifts. His brother's intellect had been added to his own. His budding magical abilities had been enhanced 100-fold. Although his vicious tormentor of a brother had been reduced to a drooling automaton enthralled to Vilitch's command, his body had been imbued with diabolic strength. Realizing the vengeful potential of these new gifts, Vilitch began laughing maniacally as the grotesque fusion of warrior and runtling staggered out of their lodging. And as the air around them glowed with baleful magic, Vilitch embarked on a killing spree, sending crackling arcs of pure change into those who had looked down upon him in the past, and forcing the body of Tommen to throttle any who tried to stop him. By the time the sun set, the village had been consumed by the sorcerer's fire, and the streets ran with molten flesh. Many of the village's warrior elite were away, and so the sorcerer twin had not finished his work and hunted them down. Using his newfangled powers, he enslaved their minds, making them little more than walking puppets that lived and died according to his whims. Having satiated his vengeance, Vilitch went into the world, seeking ways to further his own power. In this pursuit, it seemed almost inevitable that Vilitch would cross paths with the soon-to-be anointed, ever-chosen Archaon. It was during his quests for the Crown of Domination, which Archaon had quested for an inordinate amount of time, that Vilitch, causing a storm, washed the champion's ships ashore on Bretonnia. Vilitch's proposal was simple. He would provide Archaon with knowledge of the location of the Crown of Domination, and in exchange, Archaon would help Vilitch gain a harmless trinket for himself. This trinket, according to the curseling, was located in Briony Castle, and although wary of treachery, Archaon's desire for the Crown of Domination was all-consuming, and so it was that he joined Vilitch in the siege of Briony Castle. The Bretonian trebuchets took a heavy toll on the Chaos Army. The first slab of masonry to fall dashed the brains out of a Chaos Giant known as Corpse Maker over a 20-yard area. as further projectiles ploughed through the ranks of Archaon's infantry, leaving bloody furrows in the ground filled with the mangled bodies of the slain. Archaon lost patience, raised his sword, and bellowed a challenge to the lord of the castle, calling him a coward and daring him to come out and fight. Baron Lucas was the arrogant warden of the castle, and took Archaon's challenge as an insult to his honour. And so it was that he opened the gates and sallied forth to meet Archaon. Several hundred noble warriors lowered their lances as Bretonnian chargers galloped to meet the Chaos Menace. Baron Lucas himself flew overhead upon his hippogriff with a vanguard of Pegasus knights. With Lucas's army committed, Archaon smiled grimly. Foolish Bretonnian lord has fallen for his trap and come out from the safety of his walls, to be ensnared by Archaon's trap of knights of his own, smashing into the Bretonnian lines. The fighting was fierce and bloody, as Archaon called in his juggernauts. Pegasus knights dove to intercept the stampeding beasts, but Vilitch unleashed bolts of sorcery that engulfed the winged steeds, bathing them in the magical fires of change. In an instant, the Pegasi were transformed into dozens of different forms, none of which could fly, and so they all, inevitably, plunged to their doom. Baron Lucas himself escaped this fate as his hippogriff dove into the melee, its claws slashing left and right, cutting through Chaos armor as though it was paper. Faced with this new threat, the Chaos lines parted, and a slaughter brute lumbered forward. Those knights in the vicinity brave enough to charge the beast were dead in an instant, swatted aside like bothersome insects. Lucas's hippogriff leaped at the slaughter brute, and though Lucas's sword was aimed true, it found nothing but air. The creature itself was shackled to the will of Jarkil, one of Archaon's exalted heroes. Jarkil even now manipulated the creature's actions through the movements of a wooden puppet, parrying Lucas's blade with the skill of a master fencer. Again and again, Lucas failed to land a blow, and he realized the giant beast was mocking him, toying with his foe before delivering the death blow. Growing bored of his opponent, Jarkil extended his control, and in the blink of the eye, the slaughter brute grasped hold of the hippogriff and tore its wings off, showering blood and feathers everywhere before smashing the beast into a pulp with repeated blows from its battering ram-sized fist. The slaughter brute then picked Lucas up with one giant claw and crushed him like an egg. It was too much for the Bretonnians, and as they fled from the gory sight, Archaon's forces cut them down. Archaon, surrounded by his retinue, looked upon the massacre with approval, when one of his bodyguards was suddenly plucked from the saddle and ripped in half by the slaughter brute. In the corner of his eye, Archaon saw the magnitude of the betrayal, as Jarkil's dead body slid from the end of Vilitch's sword. The curseling had stabbed the puppeteer, causing the slaughter brute to run amok. Clearly, Vilitch had lured Archaon here to slay him and claim his artifacts of chaos. Archaon's knights could not evade the slaughter brute's rampage. Every strike crushed both rider and mount beneath terrible hammer-like blows. As the beast loomed over Archaon, he held his ground, and unleashed the demon trapped within his sword, the Slayer of Kings. Unnatural vitality coursed through Archaon's body, filling him with strength. Moving faster than a speeding viper, he struck, plunging the demon sword deep into the monster's heart. Archaon dismounted and marched towards Vilitch, smashing his bodyguards aside like ragdolls and flattening the sorcerer with a punch that could have felled a Drakewald oak. Holding the Slayer of Kings to Vilitch's throats, Archaon demanded to know where the crown of domination was. Cackling to himself, Vilitch uttered the name, Be'lakor. Only the first demon prince knew the location of the crown. Still chuckling, Vilitch vanished in a gust of multi-hued smoke. Archaon swore the next time he met the sorcerer, there would be a reckoning, and with that, he left the killing fields of Bretonnia in search of Be'lakor. Although Vilitch's scheme against the Ever-Chosen was foiled, he'd gone on to have a few more misadventures of note in the Warhammer world. In the year 2480 of the Imperial calendar, some 20 years before the coronation of Karl Franz, and kind of at what used to be the start of the Total War Warhammer timeline, he joined forces with Lord Festerlung, champion of Nurgle. The two formed an alliance to journey into the Mountains of Morn. There, they fell upon the Iron Eye Ogre tribe and set about their slaughter, only to be thwarted in their ambitions by an enormous stonehorn that trampled across scores of their Chaos warriors. Vilitch unleashed a great spell, having no patience for this kind of resistance, that mutated Festerlung and all of his followers into gibbering spawn in the blink of an eye. A tide of fangs and twisted limbs rip both the Stonehorn and the Iron Eye tribe to ribbons before they dispersed into the mountains, broken. Vilitch continued on, presumably on a quest to find some relic or source of ancient power to strengthen his own. Then again, in the year 2515, he incinerated the town of Zargrad with balefire, the sorcerer's laughter infecting all of those, even as they burned in his flames. Again, presumably seeking out a way in which he could extend his own power. And so Vilitch continues his rampage across the Warhammer world, very much serving his own ambitions, but in times aligning with the greater powers of chaos as well. In terms of his equipment, because Vilitch enjoys the patronage of the great sorcerer Tzeentch himself, and as part of the god's fickle plans, he's gifted the Twisted Twin with a dark crucible, a powerful artifact that is able to harness and store a great reservoir of magical energy. Now, the way this would work on the tabletop is that if a opposing wizard failed to cast a spell, you'd be able to keep the dice they used that they didn't get the required number they needed to reach to be able to cast the spell successfully, and use that to dispel any further spells. So a good bonus to the idea being that that wizard wasted magical energy, which Vilitch then absorbed with the Vessel of Chaos, which is this dark crucible, that then used to his own means to stop that wizard casting any more spells. Now, in terms of how they translated that into Total War Warhammer, it's very different. It gives them the Vessel of Chaos passive ability, which they translated as being a regenerative force for the barriers in Total War Warhammer 3. It also improves Tzeentch authority and gives a bonus to the changing of the way cost for Drain Magic, ward save, and negative 10% on their magical spells from the lore of Tzeentch. So a bit different of an interpretation, but you know, a fun one nonetheless, and that regenerating barrier is very helpful in Total War Warhammer 3. But that about sums it up for Vilitch the Curseling, the Twisted Twin. As always, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to catch you all on the next one. Alright guys? Bye.